cake, I have a 6-inch board. This is going to go on the bottom of the cake. Every cake has a board. Did you use one?
Yeah.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
There's a board right down here that the cake sits on. And you just spread some frosting on it. It's really hot, so it's going to melt it. This is Italian meringue buttercream. It's my go-to frosting. I make all my cakes with meringue unless someone doesn't want it. It's all just egg whites and butter. So it's fluffy and not as sweet as American buttercream. I just have to mix it around because it got really like a lot of air bubbles in there. And you just whip it around and it kind of firms it up again and gets rid of those air bubbles. Okay. You got your cake board, just dab some frosting on there to act as glue. You always put, you know, you have the bottom of the cake that's baked in the pan and you have the top. You always put the top of the cake down so you have a nice flat side on the top. Always remember, just flip your cakes upside down on the board. Lay more frosting in there.
You, if you're making larger tiers like a tiered cake or whatever, do you make them all 4-inch or do you make ones that are like 16?
I make them all 4 inches high is usually my height. Sometimes I go up like 5 inches if I want. Depends on the decorations I'm doing and the theme. But usually it's all like 4 inches. So once again, the top of the cake, that was on top of your pan, that goes down first.
Do you use any flavor or color because it's kind of ivory?
This is just the butter.
Oh, really?
It's vanilla.
What's it?
It's the Kirkland Costco butter. Makes it kind of ivory.
What is the vanilla that gives it the ivory color?
And the vanilla too. Forgot about that. I used the vanilla is that brown color, so it makes it the ivory color. If I want to look really white, I just add some white gel color to it, and it turns it a little bit more whiter. But when you do your cakes, you don't really notice this unless you have white decorations and stuff on it.
When I want it really white, I use sometimes the high ratio of shortening, so it's
White. On Italian meringue?
Uh-huh.
I never use shortening with Italian meringue.
Yeah.
I think this is a lot higher than 4. Well, we got tall cake. It's 4.5 inches.
Better.
Yeah.
When you put shortening, does it get hard?
No. It's the same, no.
Just get soft.
Oh, I missed it. Oh.
Okay, so you got all your cake stacked. All you're going to do for the upside down method, you're going to do the top first. There's a lot of icing. Just kind of press it down as I'm smoothing it because you want to get rid of all the air bubbles and just make sure it's all nice and flat on there. I'm just like, kind of like spreading butter on the bread. You just want to press it down because you don't want any air bubbles. I just try to smooth it out as much as I can.
With an angled spatula, right?
I love this thing.
Offset angled.
Even when I work on big cakes, I still use this little thing. I have the huge spatula. I don't like the way it's too huge. This one I have control over. Okay, you just slap some icing on it, and this is what the upside down method is. You get wax paper, and you lay it over the top, and just smooth it out. Get a bigger cake board. This is like 8 inches, I think.
Looks like it.
Yeah, I think it's an 8 inch. You just put it right. I covered it in. It has Saran Wrap in there and foil because I reuse this all the time. I just put it right on the top of the cake. Then you just flip it over.
Magic.
Wow.
And then once you got it flipped over, all I have to do now is fill up the sides. I always used to have a big problem with bulging cakes, and I found out that once you do this, you see all these little gaps in there? You have to smush the icing. So I'm doing like a crumb coat. Just make sure you press the icing into those crevices. And I'm just doing a crumb coat, so I don't really mind about all the crumbs going all over the place. just want to make sure you want to squeeze all the icing in there so there's no reason for the icing to bulge in there.
Is that about the standard amount of icing that you put in the center, or I mean in the layer, in between the layers? Because I feel like, I think maybe I'm putting too much in.
Too much?
Because I feel like it's always spilling out.
Yeah, I
I don't
find
know if
the
it's-
more filling you add, the more it's not as stable.
Right.
It's usually like a half inch at the
Okay.
most.
Okay.
If I do want to do more fillings and I do a ganache coat, I'll put it thicker because ganache is more firmer.
Okay.
So I'll pipe a circle of ganache, a ring of ganache first, and let that firm up in the fridge, and then I'll put my filling in the middle. And it's
Okay.
usually like a mousse filling, and that ganache on the outside helps support it. But when I do butter, like Italian meringue buttercream, I don't do the ring. I just do it this way.
If you're using this meringue buttercream strictly for your icing, but you're not covering it with fondant or anything.
I still cover it with fondant.
Then, but if you're using it as your finished coat, okay, do you have any problem with it being too soft in order to
Nope.
decorate on the side?
A lot of
It won't slide down at all?
I haven't had, unless it's like hot like this, it might slide down. But I've done all Italian meringue buttercream cakes and put fondant decorations on it and haven't had a problem with it sliding down. Okay, so I got the crumb coat on here. And you can do this, it just depends sometimes on the weather. Like right now it's hot. I would put this in the fridge for half an hour just to get a little firm and then finish adding more frosting to it. But since we don't have time, so now I got all the frosting pretty much filling in all the gaps. And you always want to put more than you need because it's always, you'll see what I mean later on, it's always easier to take off the extra and not having to add any more. So you kind of see how thick that is. It's probably better over there.
Yeah.
You always add a thick layer. So you're going to take most of it off anyways. And why I frost cakes upside down, it gives you a nice flat top that's, oh, I totally forgot this step. And you flip it over upside down,
Yeah.
level it.
I was looking at it, so like,
Again.
You're supposed to do that first so that
Yeah.
you can squeeze the cake and make sure it's leveled.
Yeah, I thought about it.
Totally forgot. Do that before you frost the sides.
Okay.
Like it's looking a little lopsided.
We were all going with it. It was fine.
Because I added that thick layer of frosting on the top. So I'm just smushing the cake until it's like level.
So how does that thing work for the benefit of
The leveler
people?
has this little bubble in the middle and you want to line it up between these two marks. If you're like this way, the bubble's all the way up here. If you're this way, the bubble's here. So you want to get right in the middle. This is my cake leveler. Okay, now it's level. Then you frost the sides. I know, I'm so messy because I'm so nervous.
Great.
It will look pretty in a while.
Yeah, do you cook that icing?
No, this is Italian meringue buttercream. You just whip up egg whites and then boil up your sugar
Oh.
until it reaches soft ball stage, which is like 248 degrees, and then you slowly pour the hot sugar into the egg whites. And you whip it up. Yeah, I think
John did it.
John did.
Yeah.
So basically you make a meringue, and then once you have the meringue, you add the butter to it. And it becomes meringue buttercream.
How long do you whip it?
Oh my gosh, forever. It's like,
Half an hour, right?
Like 10 minutes or...
because you're adding like 248 degree sugar to the eggs, it takes sometimes like up to half an hour for it to get to room temperature.
Yeah.
And usually towards the end, if it takes too long, I'll stick the whole canister in the fridge for like 5-10 minutes to speed it up. And sometimes if I'm desperate, I stick ice packs at the bottom of the mixer.
To what,
Because you can't add the butter to it until
what
it's room
amount of
temperature.
stiffness do you have with your egg whites before you add that syrup?
It's supposed to be soft peaks. Soft peaks. There's this,
And then you keep on beating it as you're adding it.
okay. So once you got it roughly iced, I take a straight edge thing and you just hold it up so it's completely supposed to be like a right angle, I think you say. And basically I just started out really slow, like a 45-degree angle against the cake. I just want to make sure it's centered on the board. Okay. 45-degree angle of the cake, and I'm just going to carve it slowly and slowly until this blade touches up against the cake board. So you just keep on going around. And you just wipe off the excess onto
Very clean.
the side of your
Does it do it? Yes.
container.
Like in the showing the plan. What's it done? Now we're doing.
That's why I love the turntable.
Mm-hmm.
Just put it on
Very
there,
nice.
spin it around.
You're angling it different as you go, or is it not the same all the
It's
time?
pretty much at a 45-degree angle. Just sometimes I spin it too fast. So I have all the excess off. I take the excess off the top. Because it's a cardboard top up there. And if you need to make it really smooth, you can dip this in hot water and get the blade really hot and wipe it dry and then put it against it, and the heat from this kind of melts the butter. But with Italian meringue, if you use a hot blade, it discolors the icing, so you can get these like golden yellow streaks. So usually I try to avoid using any heat on this. But if I do ganache, I also do ganache in the regular buttercream this way. When I do ganache, I'll heat up the blade. And sometimes you can just float it on top of a flame, like a candle or something, just get it hot. And when you put it up against it melts the chocolate and it smooths it out for you. So you see how you pretty much have, it's all nice and smooth. And you got the tall straight sides with. And you stick this in the fridge. A cake this size should take about half an hour in the fridge. And it gets all nice and firm. And then I'll show you the next step, which I have sitting inside that fridge right there. So basically put it in the fridge for like half an hour because you want it to get firm. Italian meringue buttercream is mostly butter, and butter gets cold. Gets cold and hard. Gets hard and cold. I don't know what you say. Gets hard when it's cold. So here's an 8-inch that I did the same thing too, but I did the raspberry. I just put raspberry preserves in the Italian meringue, and that's a cake that's sitting there. And when it's all nice and cold, you just flip it over. This is at the top. You just pop the little board off, and then you have this right there. You just peel off the wax paper. And usually,
Wow.
like I peeled off the wax paper, and this is the dirty side. I put that straight down. And I put the cake right back on there. Because that way I can move it around. And when I want to cover it with fondant, I usually just put it up on something a little higher. And I'll cover up in fondant. And once I have it covered up in fondant, I'll have the paper. And what I do is peel off the paper. And it's kind of sticky in the bottom from that extra frosting on here. And then I put it on top of the other cake if you're doing tiered cakes.
Do you put a thinner coat of that, almost like a scratch coat, if you're going to cover it with fondant? Or do you
No.
use the regular?
No, once this is
thick coating?
cold, it's really cold. You can rub your hands
No,
on
no,
it.
I meant the level, that right now, you could decorate without
Yeah.
fondant, right? But if you're gonna cover it with fondant, do you use a thinner coat of the Swiss meringue?
I use the same layer. You can kind of tell how you can see the cake through it. If I don't use fondant, I'll put a thicker layer of the
Okay.
meringue so you won't see the cake through it. But
So you
this is
use something like
typically-
cardboard or not? Because when you do
yeah,
sauce-
you make sure the board's a little bigger. Sometimes they go up and you have like an inch cake board. Like this, I use an 8-inch cake with an 8-inch board because your cakes always shrink like a 1/4 inch. But
Right.
if I need more, I'll go up an inch on a cake board so that you have more frosting. But this is what you put in the fridge. It's all nice and you get the nice sharp edges with. And you may have some see those little air pockets? And all I have to do is take my flat edge. I have some more of this raspberry.
Just fill it.
And I just quickly melt it.
Look at it go.
I need to whip it up so it firms up again. This is the thing about Italian meringue. If it gets a little air, if I let this sit tomorrow, it'll have a bunch of air pockets. Like, I guess the air is coming out of it. You just quickly whip it up, and it makes it all nice and velvety, smooth again.
Do you find that it holds up better in hot weather than regular buttercream, or is there any frosting that people find that holds up any
This
better?
doesn't hold at all.
It doesn't hold up well in hot weather. This is like a stick of butter. So
Yeah.
whoever a stick of butter reacts outside in the heat, that's what this one
Okay.
reacts. I just prefer the taste and texture of Italian meringue over American buttercream. Especially when you flavor it with
Like
fruits.
one recipe must take a lot of egg whites, right?
Yeah, well, 8 cups, which is what I usually make at a time. 8 cups of buttercream takes about 6 egg whites. 6 large egg whites. And like 1.5 pounds of butter. So I just quickly ran my spatula across the top just to fill in the holes and just scrape off the excess.
Can you send me the recipe to put it on the newsletter?
Sure.
We have it from last year. Start repeating everything.
So once it's all done, and this comes back to room temperature really quick. So if I want to clean it up some more, I'll pop it back up in the fridge, let this firm up a bit, and then I'll go through, and you see how it's kind of leaning over on the side. It's too hot right now, but I'll just run my finger along the edges to clean it up once it's cold again. And you're done. Now to cover it with fondant, I like the cake to be really cold. So you put it in for about half an hour, let it get really cold. In the meantime, you roll out your fondant and stuff, and you don't even have to prep the surface. You take it out, just lay the fondant over, smooth it. By the time you're done smoothing with it, this is already softening up, and the fondant sticks to it. So there's no like.
Also, you don't add anything to
I don't add anything now, because
The heat in your hand.
yeah, it's
and
already
stuff.
melting soft. And I always try and keep it like in the fridge so it stays firm. So sometimes I work on the cake, I'll cover it with fondant, I'll put it back in the fridge. I'll prep up my decorations, take it out of the fridge, stick it back on, put it back in the fridge. Because any dents you get in there, it's you'll see through. But if the cake is cold, it'll stay nice and smooth.
Since you're covering, if you're covering that with fondant, how long can you leave it outside? Or do you refrigerate your cakes that are
I've
covered with
heard
fondant?
you can leave it sit out for like 4 days.
Now, once you
Isn't
cover
that
that with fondant, we can leave the cake out for 4
4
days.
days.
Because the fondant is covering
It
the butter.
preserves it. And this can sit out for 4 days without being refrigerated.
Huh.
And you can't eat this cold because it tastes like butter. If it comes to room temperature, it tastes a lot better. So usually, if I have the cake in the fridge, I'll keep it in the fridge so it's firm for transportation because a cake just travels better when it's cold. You don't have to worry about it moving around and stuff. And a cake this size would take about 3-4 hours to completely come to room temperature. So that's usually the time of a party. By the time you get there, do the setup. People have cake usually 3-4 hours later. By then, everything's at room temperature and it'll taste right. Try eating it cold. It tastes like you're eating stick of butter. Yes.
If you know a cake's gonna be that, like, they're gonna do the party within an hour after you get, or the cake within an hour after, do you pull it out early and
Or I'll
deliver it
pull
that
it out.
early?
I've done this too. I pulled it out and I let it sit out room temperature throughout the day, and I'll stick in the fridge about an hour before I leave,
Just to transport.
just to firm up the
Okay.
outside
Okay.
to transport it. That way the inside isn't all cold. It just depends. Like I have to
Yeah.
figure out like where am I going, how far am I driving, when's the cake being
What are they
eaten.
That's
Yeah.
decorated
And I'll
with fondant,
fold it.
that's already decorated.
Yeah, I always transport a cold cake because they just hold up better. Everything's nice and firm and solid in there when it's cold.
Angela, can you smile? So that
Now with your small one that you have, you could see the same thing with the pink one. You can see lines in the cake through it.
Through it.
So would you refrigerate that and then go back on it and do another
Yeah.
layer if you wanted, if you weren't doing fondant over top?
Yeah, you could do more and more layers.
Okay.
You could do this first and firm it, like let it get firm. Go back and then put another layer in, and that way
Okay.
your layers are like solid. Because
Okay.
some people, I've seen YouTube videos of where they constantly do it. They put it back in the fridge, bring it out, put another layer, put it back in the fridge, bring it out, put another layer, and they just keep on layering their buttercream on it.
Okay.
And that way you get the tall, straight, even
Okay.
size.
Okay.
And this is really soft right now. You can see.
Yeah.
If you try and drive with a cake like this, it'll probably really slide and crash and all that stuff. It tastes delicious when it's room temperature.
we're good.
Okay? Yeah, that's it.
Let's give it up for Angela. Right now we will auction these two. Which one
Yeah.
first?
Even
And
a big one.